One thing that the schools have done differently, I used to receive a call on a Monday from a parent saying, oh my God, my son or daughter has had a concussion, what do we do? I still receive those calls, but now what the schools are doing, because of the concussion law since summer of 2010 in the state of Massachusetts, is that when the child has a concussion, they cannot return back until being cleared by a physician. The school nurse is also privy to it, as is the trainer. But everybody come Monday morning is more privy to the fact that the child has sustained a concussion. So now oftentimes I'll receive a call from the nurse saying, are there any accommodations that the child needs, because we are familiar with the fact that he has had a concussion. One thing that I just want to caution is, with a concussion law, children are supposed to be seeing their pediatrician, and the families are taking the children to the pediatrician. But where I'm finding a little bit of a breakdown is that although as comprehensive as the pediatrician is and wants to be for the child, there are some pediatricians that are out there that are clearing the child to return. And I've had children return as early as 3 days because they're not displaying symptoms of concussion. Gone are the days where the symptom concussion has to be vomiting or has to be dizziness. They can be subtle, but if the pediatrician isn't aware of it, the child is cleared to return, and they go back to the playing field a week later. And this is incredibly dangerous. So what I'd like to see happen is that we have more resources for those that are able to clear the child with the knowledge of brain injury.
Could it also be sometimes that the child is not being as forthright as he or she could be?
Absolutely. And those children, if they want to play on that following game and they're the starter, they're not going to share a lot of information. But there are subtle neurocognitive assessments that can be done for the children to see if they're having any distraction, attention issues, other issues of cognition that might be problematic that a physician may not be able to pick up, as subtle as they are, because of their lack of education with concussions per se.
The entity in charge of implementing and enforcing the new law is the Department of Public Health. Although it is quite a large undertaking, the department is efficiently making it as easy as possible for everyone involved. Dr. Lauren Smith is the medical director of the DPH and the person ultimately responsible for ensuring compliance with the law.
Well, the department has a responsibility for turning the law into regulations and then supporting schools as they implement them.
And when did you first start taking notice of head injuries and concussions in school sports?
The department has been interested in this for a while. Our data has shown us that, unfortunately, head injuries in sports isn't rare. So several years ago, the department got a group together to really focus on concussions in sports. And over the past years, actually has distributed thousands of heads-up concussion kits that we get through the CDC, worked with key stakeholders like the Brain Injury Association. So we've really been thinking about this for a while, even before the law was passed.
And what have you been doing to implement the law? Have you been visiting schools?
Implementing it is a lot of different steps. The first thing we needed to do was to identify training that was mandated as part of the law. And this is training for parents and students, as well as school athletic staff and others. And the rationale for that really is to make sure that everyone is on the same page, understands what the consequences of concussion can be, especially if you don't acknowledge it and recognize it early. But also really just to understand what are the signs and symptoms. Concussion can be subtle, and so a lot of people weren't aware that some of the things really could be signs of concussion.
What's involved in the training and who takes place? Is it a class? Is it a long course?
The training, we decided we really wanted to make sure it was easy and accessible to people, and we ideally wanted it to be free. So there are 2 trainings that we identified that had all of the key components of what we wanted people to know. One of those is through the CDC. The Centers for Disease Control has a website devoted to concussion issues, and so there's training for parents, students, coaches, and others, as well as a host of other materials, which are great. The other is also excellent, and that's the National Federation of High School Sports. They have an online training. Again, it's free and hits all the high points of what we would want people to know.
So these coaches and trainers and parents, do they go in and they take almost like an online course, and then who certifies that they've taken it?
There's 2 ways of doing that. One would be, for example, you can get a certificate that prints out, with after you've completed the course. The other thing that we wanted to make sure that people had the opportunity to do, because not everyone has access to computers, is there's materials for parents and students and coaches on the website, the CDC website. And so people could print that off, hand it out, distribute it. We've had coaches and athletic directors hand them out at the preseason meeting for the football team players and the parents, and then they just know who came to the meeting and take that attendance and know that everyone got the material.
This seems relatively low cost to implement, or are there other expenses involved?
The training piece should be low cost. I think really most of it is we've tried very hard to incorporate the regulations that we've put in place into what we hope people are already doing, because we know that the schools don't have a lot of extra funds or any extra funds to implement this. So we tried to be sensitive to that.
How many student athletes in Massachusetts suffer diagnosed concussions each year?
That's a good question. We don't have good data on the diagnosis of concussion. What we do have is data from a survey of students which showed us that about 18% said that they had an injury to the head during sports that caused a number of symptoms that could be consistent with concussion. Now, whether or not they were diagnosed with it, we don't know, but that was 18%, which is a lot of kids.
This excerpt is brought to you by the Massachusetts School of Law, the leader of reform in legal education and a leader in multimedia education for the public. To view the full interview and for a full listing of MSL's programs, log on to mslaw.edu.